Hey guys, welcome back to my third week of the Zero to Hero Challenge, where I go from an absolute noob to a AAA video game developer in just 1 year. This week, I did some level design in Unreal Engine, and I also did some programming, so stick to the end to see everything that I've done. If you learned anything from the video, let me know in the comments below. And if you're a noob game dev just like me, well, reach out. Maybe we can work on a small project together. So let's get straight into it. Into Unreal Engine. This week, I started off building a level for the tutorial that I'm doing. I started with the lights. It's made up of a few different components, a directional light that kind of acts like the sun, some fog for reflections, and a skylight. But during the lecture, I took a bunch of notes and didn't really need to reference the lecture, so I had no problems there. After that, we moved straight into the landscape. We're using the landscape editor here. The sculpt tool helps raise and lower the landscape so I can build these mountains along the edge. I built these mountains all over the edge so that my player can't just fall off and die. For some guidance, I created a highly detailed drawing so I knew what to kind of do moving forward. I have a desert area, a forest area, and kind of like a rolling hills area made. I hear planning out your map is a good idea, so that's what I did. So after about an hour or so, I got the basics of my map created, and it was time to get some material onto the landscape so it actually looks real and good. What I did was I used Quixel Bridge, honestly one of the coolest tools out there, to grab some free surface material assets. I chose sand, dirt, forest floor, as per my level design document, should we call it. Once I got all the materials downloaded and imported into my project, it was time to paint them on the landscape. So I had to make a new material in Unreal and used what they call the layer blend node to blend all the materials and their height maps into a single material that can be used with the landscape painting tool. After hooking up everything, I ran into one of my first issues. The landscape was too shiny. I wanted it to look more rough and not so reflective. I tried adjusting the lighting, but that led into another 10 issues, and I probably spent about an hour trying to figure out what was causing it. So I did what every great developer does, and I just Googled it. I ran into a few rabbit holes while searching, but none of them worked. So I thought I would try adjusting the lighting again, but that didn't work either. Then I remembered in the videos, the instructor went over it, so a quick check and all my problems were solved with just a single button. In the material editor, there's a button, fully rough. Click it and the problem's solved. Now, on to the next thing. After I had my landscape nice and rough, I made sure to leave myself a nice note so that I wouldn't make that mistake again. I have to take these notes a lot because there's so much information and I just don't want to forget these things and waste time trying to remember them. So here I'm just writing my note in Notion, and I don't think I'll be forgetting this one again. Now it was time for the fun stuff. So I started painting the landscape with the materials. It's actually that simple. You grab the forest floor material, paint it onto your map, and boom, you have a forest floor looking ground. I tried to pretend like I knew what I was doing, and I tried to make some changes to the actual material, but failed. So instead, I decided to go back to what I knew I could do, went to Quixel Bridge, found some materials that I liked, and then added them right back into my landscape material. Got some other shades of grass, wanted to make some highlight materials, so just grabbed them, downloaded them, imported them straight into my project, and I was ready to go. After I got my base material looking good, it was time to add some grass, bushes, trees to my map. So back to Quixel Bridge, grabbed a bunch of cool assets that I thought would work, dragged them into the foliage editor. Yeah, I know, it's a lot of editors, and again, I just painted them straight onto the map. There were a lot of details to play with here, the density of the brush, how it reacts with the environment, and getting exactly what I wanted was actually pretty tedious. But getting going was quick and easy. Adding the trees felt awesome. It was the first time where I was like, yeah, this is a map now. The trees really added some depth to the map, but were a rabbit hole in themselves. You can really make a lot of changes and details and get into the weeds, no pun intended, when you're putting these trees onto your map. After my trees were done, another thing that I learned was level instances. You can import an already made level into your level pretty much. So I grabbed this dungeon level off the Unreal Marketplace, made a few changes so it would look nice on my level, and then imported it using the level instance tool. You don't see it here, but this took me about 5 tries. Somehow it's simple but also complicated. Getting the dungeon to line up well in the map was tough. I had to use my new landscape skills to make sure that it sat well within its environment, but so the environment didn't end up inside the dungeon. I used some game dev magic and hid some things instead. I also grabbed some more assets and surrounded the entrance to the dungeon so that it looked more mysterious and fun to check out. After working on my map for about 2 days, I really started to understand how difficult and time-consuming it can be to create a AAA map. There's so much to get the right details, lighting, materials, all the way you want them. I definitely have a deeper respect for the level designers that make those crazy levels that we play in. Last thing that I wanted to touch on was the post-process volume. In order to get the details with the lighting just the way you want it, you have a bunch of toggles here to change hues, exposures, everything. I couldn't really do much, but I finally got my map to kind of look somewhat nice, and at least it was acceptable to me. So I played with the toggles a little bit, got it where I wanted it, and then moved on. After all of the level design in Unreal, it was time to do some coding. I finished off the 4th chapter, which went over a lot, but had to focus on different data types and how to convert or cast those types into other types, and some other weirdness of C++. I was worried I wouldn't understand it, but luckily for me, each chapter has great quizzes at the end where I get to flex my skill over the topics. Here I'm using my new editor called Sea Lion, and I like it way more than Visual Studio. I'm still using the editor lightly, but there are some nice features that it provides straight out of the box compared to Visual Studio. At the end of the chapter was another great quiz where you had to calculate the height of a ball being dropped off a tower after some amount of time. I liked it because it felt like coding in a game where you might need to calculate something like that. It wasn't too easy either, so I got to actually use my brain here to figure it out. I made a few mistakes on my first pass, but after a bit of trial and error, I ended up solving it and made sure that my answer was exactly like the output expected. Solid week in my opinion. This week took way longer than I expected, but that just goes with trying to master a new skill. Next week will be programming in Unreal Engine, which totally stokes me out, and I can't wait to show you what I learned. See you next week.